Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, March the 7th, 2023. So I want to start off by saying that I've made a mistake and I'm quite embarrassed. The last couple of videos, not the last one but the ones before, I talked about the chart of Alex Murdow, and I said that he was born on June the 17th, 1968, and I've analysed a chart for June the 17th, 1968. I created the structure around this chart of June the 17th, 1968, and now I find out that he was almost certainly not born on that date, but he was actually born on March the 27th, 1968. Now, I find that really embarrassing. It kind of undermines astrology in a way. You know, you look at this fictitious chart and you talk about it and you try and apply it to Murdow, and then you find that that chart wasn't his chart at all. So I am embarrassed. On the plus side, he's still a Gemini. March the 27th, so May the 27th is Gemini. So everything I was saying about Gemini was correct. He also has a lot of planets in Gemini. Like I was saying before, he has a Sun, Moon, Mercury and Mars in Gemini. So really that hasn't changed. What else? And I also said that at the time of the murder, Saturn was sesquiquadrate his Mercury. Same thing, Saturn was sesquiquadrate his Mercury if we set his chart up for May the 27th. So it wasn't a complete disaster, but it was really strange. There were so many people saying that he was born on June the 17th, and I looked on his police record, his police record, whatever, his arrest record. There was nothing, at least not nothing I could see. I just looked at his prison record. Didn't give his date of birth, and the source for his date of birth is actually the transcript of the trial. CNN produced a transcript, and that showed March the 27th, 1968. So apologies for that. So I'm just mentioning that by way of correction. Now, later on, I want to talk about an evil Pisces by the name of Reinhard Heydrich. He was a Nazi, and it's his birthday today, or it would have been his birthday today. He'd be 119. So that's actually possible. People do live that long. So if he hadn't have been assassinated, who knows? He might have still been alive. Well, he would have been hanged as a war criminal. But before I do that, I want to talk about today's stars. The main thing today is there's a full moon. The sun is in Pisces, moon is in Virgo, and this full moon is a time when we're trying to organize ourselves. We want everything to be just right. Yet it's all chaos. We can't deal with that kind of organization. It's just impossible. So if we try to clear our lives up, it's just not going to work, because the tide of chaos will sweep everything away. So I think with this full moon, we mustn't try too hard, and we mustn't be obsessive. So if you're a sufferer from obsessive compulsive disorder, this full moon could be quite difficult, because we are there are so many things to worry about, and we just want to know what's going to happen next, but we're not going to know what's going to happen next. So the best way of managing this full moon is to accept that we live in a chaotic world. We can create a bit of order in some small part of this chaotic world, but we can't order the whole world. That's just not possible. So we do need to accept that. Another thing to say about this full moon is that it is squared by Mars. Now, Mars is a planet of anger and aggression, and our attempts to sort everything out could drive us mad, could make us angry. Or let's put it another way. We might be dealing with other people who are mad at us because we can't get it together. In fact, because it's impossible to get it together. People are going to ask the impossible. So that's something to bear in mind with today's full moon. It's not just going to be about today. Full moons can last a couple of weeks, so bear that in mind. Is there a resolution to the full moon? Well, the planet Uranus is sextile the Sun. It's trine the moon, so that suggests that the way round it, the way to deal with people making unreasonable requests, is to ourselves be dramatic. Now, that doesn't mean being obnoxious or violent. We just have to come up with an original solution, a solution that recognizes the chaos, but also tries to put some things tries to create a little bit of order. And we perhaps need to remember that things that are eternal, things that aren't going to die, perhaps the spiritual values in our life, these things are beyond order and chaos. They are always going to be there. So let's talk about Reinhard Heydrich. Now, when you think of Nazis, people often wonder, who was the most evil Nazi? And I suppose one might think that Hitler was the most evil of them all. But you could mitigate that by saying that maybe he had a difficult upbringing. He didn't come from a particularly prosperous family. He was cut up by the death of his mother. You could come up with all sorts of psychological and social reasons why he turned out to be who he was. So that kind of takes a little bit of an edge off his evilness. Now, when you talk about Reinhard Heydrich, I think there's an argument to say that he was the most evil Nazi because he had the opportunities. He was fairly well off. He came from a very cultured background, and he was very musical. I think his father was a composer, and Heydrich was a very good violinist. So someone who comes from such a good background, is intelligent, is cultured, there isn't so much excuse for the evil he did. Now, as a Pisces, how does that fit with him being evil? So Pisces is about absorbing oneself in the sea, just not thinking too much, just going with it. Now, that perhaps describes someone just getting into Nazism without thinking about it. You don't have to worry about moral issues. You just go with it, and you take it to its logical conclusion. And he really was, I think, a typical Pisces. He was thrown out of the German Navy before Hitler came to power, potentially getting a girl pregnant, a girl from a good background, from a rich family, I think. Maybe she was the daughter of a shipbuilder or whatever. He had an affair with her, and I think he got her pregnant, and the story was that he had previously promised to marry her, and then he refused to marry her because it would be beneath him to get involved with someone to marry a girl who he himself had got pregnant. So he was kind of blaming her for what he did himself. And that is kind of typical Pisces behavior. It's often said that male Pisceans are some of the worst and the most unreliable people. And that's even before he became a serious Nazi. And so you get the idea of someone, who's completely absorbing themselves in a way of thinking and believing, a belief system. And he, with the violin and his that's quite nice and Piscean, the art and culture and all that kind of thing. So I think he did that, and he really went with it. Even his death was kind of a bit Piscean in a way. He was ambushed in Prague, and he, rather than asking the driver to escape straight away, he just went with the flow, and he ran after. He got the driver to stop the car, and he ran after the people who tried to kill him. And in the meantime, one of them threw a bomb at him, which blew up and got some horsehair in his body, and he died of an infection sometime later. So that going with the flow, in a way, killed him. Of course, if he hadn't have been killed, he would have been probably hanged a few years later if he didn't commit suicide. So Pisces can be evil, and there are some other famous Nazis who had their sun in Pisces. Adolf Eichmann, I put a picture on this video. The older man, that's at the time of when he was sentenced to death for his responsibility for killing millions of Jews. Notorious Nazi Mengele, he was also a Pisces. So Pisces has a capacity for complete evil. And I think and I do believe that capacity for evil is about just absorbing oneself in something, just becoming completely part of it and taking it to its absolute logical conclusion. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.